Welcome back, everyone. I'm Kevin Miller. This is What Drives You. Thanks for joining me as we get to the root issues of personal transformation and remove the real and perceived obstacles to your growth so you can drive further and faster with less effort and enjoy the ride as you reach the destinations that give you true fulfillment. In this episode, we talk about other treatments for depression. I mean, depression doesn't take away your drive. It just leaves you stuck in park, idling. Therapy and medications are the primary treatments for depression. This leaves out many other treatments and doesn't address the habits we often have that can massively dilute the efficacy of any amount of therapy and meds. So we're going to give you about 13 different treatments, other treatments. Depression, apathy, just feeling blue and numb. I mean, these are just real issues affecting all of us, the whole culture. We're all on the spectrum. And we're all coping to a level. And even when we are greatly inspired in one area of our life, we can be dealing with aspects of depression in other areas. Now, no treatments are guarantees, but all of them are highly relevant in combating these issues. And the more you employ, the more chance you have. So in this episode, we get through 6 of them. Now, it's myself and Randy James, medical doctor and functional medicine expert. You can find him at truelifemedicine.com. So we're going to cover about 6 and then continue them in an episode about a week from now when we come back on health and wellness. We'll cover the rest then. And a quick note of relevance I feel we should have started off with in this show is motive. I mean, until you have a clear motive to pull out of depression, few, if any, treatments are going to matter, possibly. But that's going to handicap any effort. And motive is the main focus of my book, What Drives You. So if you're struggling with depression, I encourage you to check it out as another resource. And hey, if you're in Long Beach, California, it's at the public library. A friend just sent me a text. So there's only one, act fast. Otherwise, go to Amazon and buy yourself a copy or leave a review for this show. And let me know. I'll send you a free copy of the book, autographed. kmiller@kevinmiller.co. It's also where you can email me with thoughts you have about this show and the topics we cover. Any questions or ideas or concerns, let me know. I would love to hear from you. All right. Next, Dr. Randy James and I talk about alternative treatments to depression, then therapy and meds. As you and I are sitting here talking about how to word this and to be politically correct, compassionate in this aspect of depression and apathy and numbness. But now you said it could show up in the forms of...
well, most commonly, and I think to a lot of people in the audience, would be the word fatigue. My energy is low. If you go to your local primary care doctor and say, I'm just so tired, I'm exhausted, my energy is low, I'm not enjoying my workout or my spouse or my kids or my job, I almost guarantee you that the doc would say, gosh, these are all classic signs of depression.
Okay, and when you said that, it got me to thinking even things like indecision. If you're really struggling, finding yourself like, gosh, I'm having a hard time making a decision, or just uninspired, is a great. And I think I said on a show recently, it kind of hit me of the privileged gratitude that I have that I don't know waking up to days where I don't have inspiration. Maybe that's a good word, where I'm not inspired. I'm not eager to, I've got something that I'm looking forward to, hope. It was Tony Robbins who, I don't know if he's created it, but famous for saying that the happiest people are those who are just making progress.
Ooh.
And something.
There's a big theme of that. Dan Pink is another
Daniel
guy
Pink,
in your world. Yeah, Daniel Pink. And he wrote, I think he even said it more like the single categorical most important thing for is a sense of progress and meaningful work.
Yeah.
And
I'm reading his book right now. It's called Drive.
Oh yeah, it was quoted there.
Yeah,
and that other book that we quote.
Yeah, it is. So in looking at these things, and we know that we have diseases of despair is a new. To me, it's a new category. Maybe it's just because I'm looking at it. You would know, but in the chronic illness and disease, it has its own category that we're to be told is
one of the faster growing ones, diseases of despair, which includes suicide. Though, yeah, you were saying that not all the suicide rates are getting worse necessarily, but I was reading about overdoses and things, medication. We know that, entertainment, our propensity to numb, to medicate,
Right. We're
to
medicating
escape.
something.
Escape is another good. So so any of those things, and you would say that when we list those out, we're all on the spectrum.
Yeah.
To some degree, but if I just go to the base value of, are your days inspired? Are you looking forward to something? Are you, hopeful, excited? And if you're struggling with that, here are some things
To do.
that can help. It's not a guarantee. And I did see somebody post something online in relation to this, of somebody that they knew who was making progress, who was doing a lot of these things and still committed suicide. I get it. This isn't a guarantee, and it's, this is a non-judgment free, but it's just if you or somebody is dealing with depression, apathy, here are some other things that don't tend to get a lot of attention. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's fair, because when you reach out for help, the medical system is going to label it depression, apply medicine with, again, not judgment, and
thank God for that when it's needed.
It's going to help people. And if somebody's suicidal, I'm going to give them a medicine too. But on that spectrum, way over here is this suicidality, and that's going to need to be more aggressively treated. But we're not over there. We're trying to angle people to think about this in-between place of, I'm not as inspired as I would like to be. I'm not as creative, as energetic, as looking forward to the day as maybe Kevin Miller. Does that mean I'm depressed? Because how do I get help? And if you go into the medical system, they don't have words for this in-between place. Yeah. It's going to be like, well, it's probably depression, let's treat it. Or counseling, right? Like those are two options. And as people are going to know, there's all kinds of other options that you can give yourself and your body things to do and think and orient towards that are very likely to help you foster and build inspiration.
Exactly. I was thinking feed the transformation. If we've got depression over here, and a lot of people define it a lot of ways. And you've got Rabbi Daniel Lapin, who his definition of the opposite, or what he cites, the opposite of depression, he says is purpose. Man, I get that. Now, I could also say inspiration. Depression over here, it's
somebody else would say love, or
sure.
Right? There's all kinds of words. This morning or yesterday, that spectrum idea, which is very helpful for people to say. To realize that I myself, Randy James, yes, I've known depression. Yes, I've known anxiety. And I've known peace and joy and comfort and satisfaction too. Or our physiology tends to fear and say the negative.
Yeah.
Like, I want to run away from depression. And we tend not to say, how can I build and feed and nurture satisfaction, contentment, purpose, joy, and so I think that's where you and I are trying to engage this situation, not to the overtly depressed.
Yeah, fair.
But to all of the rest of everybody else, because I'm never as satisfied as I could be.
Yeah.
Or know as much joy as I could. And that's part of you and I having a drive towards more peace and contentment and satisfaction.
Well, and so to that then, to be gracious in this, as we're about to kind of get into a list here of some ideas, some treatments, even of feeding inspiration, that they are things that I would say I fervently grasp towards these things, because on the other side of it, I fear depression. It's not that I'm the Pollyanna figure, just wake up happy, I'm in right, out right, up right, down right, happy all the time, as the old Sunday school. So I'm not, and this isn't, and I'm not. I don't even want to put the word happiness in here. I can be inspired, I can have interest, I can have purpose, and be burdened within it.
Can I say, I think we've said it before, but if you're a new patient coming in on day number one of the first coachings or doctorings that I would give to somebody is, you're not allowed to say happy. Oh. Now, you can say happy followed immediately by definition. You can define happiness for today.
Yeah.
But if you say gosh, I'm just not happy. I'm going to chastise you. But what is the very first thing a depressed person says? I'm just not happy. I just want to be happy again. Have you woken up today and at any point today, have you said, hey, Randy, I'm happy. No. I'm just going to let everybody know I'm happy. You go and do your purpose.
Well, and look at the movies. We don't have the movie of the superhero who just gets really happy.
No,
if anything, they're
burdened with glorious purpose.
Burdened and scared, whatever. But we love to watch the purpose. We all would wish that something would that the special forces or Secret Service would show up on our doorstep and say, Randy, we need you for an important job. And you may be pissing your pants, but awesome.
Okay.
As opposed to it's just apathy.
Right. There's
nothing to do, no interest, no purpose.
There's no movies at all about a guy who gets up every day, goes to work on time, does a job really well, goes home, has dinner, works out, goes to bed.
Yeah. So again, we're looking at what are some things to do to feed, how about that? To starve apathy, depression, and feed inspiration, purpose, hope, joy, whatever. So, looking at that, there are some things that we talk about constantly on here, but and these are not in order. It's just as matter of fact, I thought of some more important ones later and put them down in the list. So I'll throw these out. One was solitude. We're at, Pascal back in the 1500s. I don't remember what it was. And back then, the man's,
getting inundated with newspapers,
a chiefest or whatever, or town gossip. I don't know. But he's saying one of the chiefest failures of man is the inability to sit in a room alone for 15 minutes, not asleep. I would say contemplatively, maybe.
Right, not writing, just with you.
Just being present is the word we use now. Of course, meditation gets thrown in there, prayer, whatever. Even there, though, I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago about prayer. It's still an active thing. And can you take even that off? It may not be possible to clear your mind, but just be.
Right. And there's even a debate in the Christian community about this idea of contemplative prayer, which I would be a fan of, but other people aren't a fan of because the danger of you're too wrapped up in your own head or something like that. And I'd say, well, yeah, that's one side the pendulum could swing on. But on the other side is you are not within your own head at all. You can't just be in there.
Which is difficult. And I catch myself thinking that I'm doing it when I'm looking outside and I'm thinking, man, it's good 5 minutes of just staring out the window. Man, I am thinking. I am grinding the wheels. And I go, stop it. There's a lot of debate, can you really empty your mind? But,
well, and I don't know that's the goal isn't emptiness either. It's
just peace.
Peace, being, no. And we're not going to stay there forever. The goal is not to strive for something all the time. It's to also have the skill, the hard work, the talent of being in the moment.
Yeah.
And for most Americans, that's a challenge.
And this, I would say, is at, so Pascal talked about it a long time ago, and I'm sure somebody else talked about it a lot longer before that, but we're at a height of probably the lack of it because we do not have to have one moment without input because we all have a device in our pocket with the knowledge and information of the planet on it. It's endless. There's endless something new, endless something. We never have to be bored. We never have to
One
stop.
book title was Amusing Ourselves to Death.
That is
Neil
great.
Postman, written, guess when? Not yesterday, but in the 70s, 80s. Amusing Ourselves to Death. It's
Wow.
blunt the pain, blunt my lack of contentment with a sitcom or a new pair of shoes or a new something. And call it entertainment, call it amusement, even call it, activism. Some people, go into save the whales, save the earth, save the children, save the something. And there's a good side to that.
Yeah.
Of course. But if that's your mission, passion, purpose, reason for being, then there's not likely on the other side of that increasing joy and contentment and peace.
Well, you said the important word, I think, for this in regards to solitude, being quiet, being present, whatever, is pain. And so if anybody hearing that realizes that I don't like to go to that space because it just allows pain to come in. I've heard people blatantly say that. I'd rather stay busy and not deal with that. Obviously, that's a red flag and something to deal with Right there. Again, this is, we don't have to hold this up as a holy grail. It's one thing to feed. It's one way to feed.
Yeah.
It's one that
Awareness to have.
you and I are striving
to strive towards.
Yep. Here's another. Again, these aren't in an order. Being outside, literally being outside. So
just today, I asked the patient, "Is the sun good for you?" And the answer is
yes.
yes.
Yeah.
So why is that not on our calendar?
Yeah.
Why do we not obey that calendar? When you said that earlier, I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to bring up this topic. Have you ever heard of forest bathing?
I've got a business card of a lady on my desk behind me.
I forgot the Japanese word. It's from Japan, and in Japan they would go and take a walk in the woods, and it's called, is it on that card? Forest bathing. And there's now medical literature journals that say, yep, it does something.
It could sound hoodoo guru to you, but my gosh, if you're a person of faith as we are, that of a divine, intelligent designer, creator, I think that's what he created. How is there not a cellular connection? I just got to admit to me what it does to get outside, period. Now for me, when I say that, I'm saying I want to be, in the woods. Not everybody has that option.
Right.
Just to go sit out on a balcony, a rooftop in Manhattan, whatever, and have the sun bear down you, or have the clouds. I have kids who love the overcast. They just it makes them feel cozy and whatever does it for you. But to be outside with the air on you and be aware of it, which is a great place to do it in conjunction with what we first said, solitude. It's a great place to do it. Exercise. I mean, that one, the science of that one.
Yeah. So there we can clearly say that if you're not exercising and there's any hint of depression, then starting a regular, most days exercise program is the equivalent of starting a medium dose of an SSRI. So Paxil, Prozac, Zoloft, all of those, which are billion-dollar drugs, and they help a lot of people. And we're not against those at all. They're a tool to use. But at the same time, is there also other benefits of exercise? Oh yeah, for your brain and your skin and your heart and your kidney.
And your weight and your whatever. This was I had Robin Sharma on a show. He has the book, The 5 a.m. Club. And he's a big fan of exercising right away, as quick as you can, just because of what it does for the brain. Outside of, muscles and lungs and all that, it's BDNF, that it's going to increase that chemical in your brain.
Yeah, so BDNF is one of my favorite things to talk about, even though I can't really maintain that I understand the biochemistry, but this is a chemical that is clearly produced by the brain in response to the stress of exercise. And so there again, can there be too much stress? Yes, of course. But there can also be too little stress. And this is one of the reasons why here we are in America with the growth of diseases of despair and depression, anxiety, is simply because we do not move enough. And even if people are moving, like I'll always ask, I think we've talked about it before, what's the favorite exercise of older women? What would you say?
Of older walking?
Yeah. Is that enough to generate BDNF? A little bit.
Better than nothing.
Better than
the couch.
Absolutely.
It's next to the couch. It's monumental.
Infinitely more. But we also know that if within that walk of 30 minutes that you're doing with your friend and having a good time, if you say, okay, you see that mailbox up there? Let's just walk as fast as we can to that spot. And then you huff and puff and recover. Boom, little dose of dopamine, BDNF, all of that stuff. So my favorite book on that subject is called Spark by a Harvard psychiatrist who was dealing with kids and I think this is in the 90s and zeros. And so the data since then of in the educational system, if you start off the day with PE, does it improve test scores? 100% yes. Oh. Absolutely. Does it matter where you are on the spectrum of how fast you can walk if you're the star quarterback athlete versus the couch potato who's just huffing and puffing around the track? Probably the couch potato is going to see a steeper increase in performance that you would notice. So BDNF, the idea of spark, I like that book title because it sparks the brain. It enhances learning, enhances memory, enhances mood. If you could bottle this stuff up, it would clearly be $1 billion drug. And I think both of us choose to believe that we will never bottle that up because we're humans, and one of the foundations is movement.
Well, and there's more than just the chemicals. It's, if you're out on that walk, do you see a tree and a bird? And
right. Is it a forest bathing?
Exactly.
Or are you behind diesel fumes?
Yeah, I did forest bathing yesterday. I made myself just walk and pay attention. And, so I got a little exercise. But you and I do want to hit on, in regards to exercise, you and I were having lunch last week talking about something around this. And talking about exercise, and I said, but one of the things that is so influencing to me is looking at some of our older people that get celebrity spotlight, like the guy 65-ish or something. I think I should have looked him up before we did this, who has the Guinness record for planking. And then there's another lady, she's, 80, 90 weightlifter. Not that it matters, but just if you're looking for her to recognize her, she's African American, and she's, the grandma weightlifter or something they call her like that. But both of those people, aside from their physical feats, what's so interesting is they're 65, 85, whatever, and sharp as a tack, cognitively.
Sharp as a tack, mentally there.
And the correlation there is what's most interesting to me.
So if you read any book on, let's just call it dementia, and people think of Alzheimer's, and we are heading into an epidemic. The baby boomers are now in their 70s, and they are going to be they're going to demonstrate to us the first epidemic of dementia. That's going to put a strain on families and the heartache of that.
And you're saying it's coming?
Yeah.
Because I feel like, and
we're on the front side of the wave.
I was going to say, it feels like we're there.
Yeah.
You're saying it's, okay.
I don't know what the rates are. Like, what's the actual rate of baby boomers developing what we would call clinical Alzheimer's or clinical dementia?
Or just cognitive decline can you say that?
That's
those, because you're talking
relevant.
about the diagnosis, but just like diabetes, how many are pre-diabetic?
We're all on the spectrum, right? And so that's what I mean is I don't have clinical numbers for that, but indeed we are there. We're on the front side of this wave, meaning I think it's just going to get worse. Yeah. And if you look at any book on the prevention of this, and we've talked about it before in terms of Alzheimer's or the diseases of neurological issues like Parkinson's and ALS, and dementia being the biggest and scariest for all of us because we're all on that spectrum. Is exercise going to figure prominently in that author's recommendation? Holy cow, yes. And so is sleep and all of the things that we talk about. But specifically on exercise and BDNF, one way to describe it, and there's other chemicals that are also related to the exercise response, but that's just the famous one. It's like a Miracle-Gro in your garden. It's like fertilizer for your brain. So anything that the brain is doing, BDNF will enhance the stickiness of memory or the slipperiness of letting go of the bad, right? Both ends of that spectrum, being able to see things in perspective, spatial orientation, all of the things that we take for granted until these things start to slip away. And the fact that your movement throughout the day is going to have an impact on that over the course of time, well, right now is even convicting because here we are already at 9:30 in the morning and I haven't moved very much.
Well, I appreciate you bringing up the word movement, because if we go back to the book we reference so stinking often, Dan Buettner, The Blue Zones, and in there, I don't know if it's been so long since I've actually studied the book. We just talk about it constantly. But does he note that they don't have a need to exercise? These people in these communities where they live the longest and the wellest don't have a need for exercise because their life is movement. They have no need to go lift weights because they work, live a movement lifestyle. They walk. Yeah.
So over the weekend, somebody had referenced to me, "Hey, have you read Born to Run?" And we talked about that, and I'm like, "Have you read the next book?" So as you reference Blue Zone, I'm thinking Natural Born Heroes by Chris McDougall, and one of the Blue Zones is the island of Crete. So he just goes deeper into that. Really good book, and their life is movement, and our lives in America, by and large, are not. And even for you and I, when we tend to have an hour or two of ferocious movement and 8 hours of sedentariness.
Yeah.
And
which is what I've been trying to deal with. So I've got my little dip thing in here. I've got
I wish we could show that, because we have,
here for the folks on video, I've shown this before. Here is a walker, which is a great, cheap. You can get it. We got ours for like $5-10 at Goodwill. You get an old walker, and
it's a great dip machine.
Do dips. So I've got it in my office. I can jump down and do push-ups. We've got a pull-up bar on the doorway and some weights. So that and my thought is, every time I get up, do something, which I probably do that 25% of the time in reality. But again, through a given day, if I do 2 sets of something, it's better than nothing. If I do 7 sets and then do, a run or a ride. But yeah, it is weird. The reality that we have to consider, I think it helps to consider that we can live 100% sedentary lives and exist. And that just has never been possible through the span of existence.
Of human history.
And now I'm going to drive my car 3 times a day to drive a mile here, a mile here, a mile there, a mile whatever, and then go do a 5-mile run. Why don't I just walk or run to all those things? And, if you're picking up groceries
or taking 3 kids.
Or a kid, whatever, I get it. But just to realize that we've taken the need for movement, so we have to artificially simulate it, stick it in there.
Yeah, which
Not
is
simulate it, do it.
Well, and remember how you get frustrated when we were talking about, fasting from wine or chocolate, and you're like, it feels so forced and fake and artificial. And I would say yes. And same with exercise. You remember the scene with Michael J. Fox in the trilogy Back to the Future, and he's back in the cowboy times, and he's talking about the future, and he's saying, yeah, we have these things called tennis shoes, and we run for fun. And they're like, no way, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And it's like, we actually force ourselves to do this, and it is fake. It's absolutely fake.
Well, my grandparents, man, they grew up on a farm, and they're just looking for a chance to sit down.
That's right. The idea of stopping this hard work of doing whatever and strapping on a different pair of shoes.
Yeah, you don't have electricity, man. You're going down to get water. You're going out to milk the cows. You're going to pick something for lunch. You're sitting there cleaning a deer to eat for dinner. I mean, it's just, and now we have to do
we do have to force it.
We have to force it. Yeah.
In a sense, you could look at the negative side and say, well, isn't that fake and, manufactured? And so is a car.
Yeah.
When you get right down to it, so is, an airplane.
You and I are both close enough, again, with kids and stuff, but we could have walked to work. We could walk to lunch. We could, again, we still have to just create it.
So this is so I've got a almost 16-year-old.
Yeah. And
when he starts driving the kids or his brothers, because it's right on the way to school, it's a perfect drop off. And I'm like, I would like to plan on walking to work. It's about a 25-minute walk.
Yeah.
And that would be great. But afterwards, on the days where, Marcy's doing something else and I need to pick up the kids and take them to practice, I can't rely on my son to be doing that because he's at practice. So now I'm stuck and I'll have to run back home, pick up the car to go get the kids. And will I do that?
Yeah, I know. Well, and I do want to add, and actually it adds into my next point. So the next point I've got here is just input. But before we jump to it, I want to talk about that in regards to exercise, that if you are going outside, it does fulfill the outside part, the getting some sunshine or just see a tree and hear the wind, and that you're getting inspiration as well. So you get 2 for 1 in that sense. Now, if you're going to go to a gym or you've got a home workout thing too, you get the chance to listen to something, listen to an inspiring podcast, listen to inspiring music, something that's uplifting. Put a video on instead of watching some goofy, sarcastic meme stuff. Again, look for something inspirational. It gives us the chance to get an inspiration hit as well, which gets into the next point, which is input. So I would be remiss not to quote Zig Ziglar from my other show, the Ziglar Show podcast, and him saying, you are who you are and where you are because of what you put into your mind. You can change who you are and where you are by changing what goes into your mind. If we look right now at the culture and look at our more than ever, we got to cite that more than ever media-driven, input-driven, information-driven culture, we are bombarded more than ever. It's just a fact with information. How much of that information is life-giving, life-taking, positive, negative, uplifting, or down
pulling.
I was trying to think of that too. But literally, I mean, that's something we all have to look at, because if we want to see what's happening in the world today, which is legitimate, you're going to look at the news, and the news is led, as it always has been, by if it bleeds, it leads. It's negative. Most of the podcasts, I mean, the most popular podcasts that we have today are crime podcasts. It's entertainment, it's crime, it's not positive stuff, it's negative. So again, we can look at the day, and if we did a budget of our input, how much was positive and uplifting, how much is negative. And when we're talking about depression specifically, man, this is somebody who needs affirmative action on positive, uplifting input.
Yeah, it is huge. And in today's situation where we have an increasing amount of diagnoses of depression, anxiety, what is the role of input in, by and large, in a big sense, and then more specifically, the type of input, thinking of our younger patients and social media, and our older patients and just the political news. It's unquantifiable, but it's massive. And so 2 specific examples on that, just here in the clinic, and Marcy and I teach at the high school, and we have the privilege and opportunity to teach sex ed. And so one of our big, in fact, we kind of tag team. And so it's my time to stand up, and I've got my slides up there that connect with teenagers and social media, and how it impacts people down toward the negative, how we just want to increase their awareness, that to step back and see, oh my gosh, yeah, I can get swallowed up by a video game and lose 6 hours. Or, yeah, I get swallowed up by my shopping, whatever, and I lose this chunk of time. And they all get it. They all see it. Okay, now what? Like, who out there at 15, 16 is going to say, okay, well, what is your limitation going to be? Do your parents, and so then we dialogue, do your parents put them on? And some people say, oh, yeah, I can't have Snapchat or whatever. And other people are like, I have no limits. And our role as teachers is to engage them in a Socratic method of saying, well, you're becoming young people. Choose your path. Be aware. Don't get sucked up into something where at the end of the day, and if you didn't know, now you know, because we're telling you, you are the commodity. Your eyes are what other people are vying for. So be aware of that. Do you know that? Have you heard of the Facebook files? So Wall Street Journal is the news source that I tend to go to, and they've been doing these exclusives, and Facebook did have documentation within their own organization of the harm of Instagram on young people. Kind of like the smoking and RJR, and they knew it's addictive and harmful and all that kind of stuff, but they still advertised to young people, and they got in trouble for it. And will Facebook get in trouble or whatever? And it's like, it's not for us to say, but is there demonstrable harm to, especially to young people, down the Instagram pathway? And the answer is yes.
Well, and to that, now we're going to get into capitalistic talk and whatnot. Facebook is a business.
Is a private business.
So is, even if it's public, either way, it's a business.
RJR and selling cigarettes.
Yeah, and I do not have to go buy cigarettes. I do not have to be on Instagram. Our kids do not have to be on there. I mean,
right. So we're all on the spectrum of being influenced by whatever advertising is out there.
I do want to qualify, though, you saying Instagram, that, why, because just to say it at face value, Instagram is proven to be harmful. Well, what people generally tend to look at tends to be harmful. If my kid was going on there and only looking at pictures of the national forests, it probably wouldn't be all that harmful. Now, if they do it for 5 hours a day and don't participate in other things, maybe so. But
absolutely.
Back to it bleeds, it leads. What is most interesting to most people is, I don't even know if I would say it's negative, but it's going to be shock value. It's going to be interest. Yep. I know on drama, yep. And even just like sarcasm and what do they call it? Snarkiness and funny stuff. I know I've got, kids, and there's lots of funny stuff on there, but you look and go, man, that's all funny, but it's all kind of crass, or it's kind of critical or sarcastic.
Yeah.
And it's just, does it make you
uplifting?
Is it uplifting? Right. It's, yeah.
Well, I asked my parents-in-law this last weekend too, because they are in the other kind of screens, TV screens, and the political news, and oh my gosh, can you believe something else happened? And I'm like, gosh, I didn't know that. But now that I do know that, I don't know that I'm any better off. I'm feeling negative. It's not going to change my behavior today one little bit, and actually I might choose tomorrow not to know that.
Okay, so I just recently read, I had read it before, but it reminded me, Tim Ferriss, most people know him, best-selling author of the 4-Hour Work Week, and he's got one of the biggest podcasts on planet Earth. And maybe he said it again somewhere, that he came to a point and decided, I am no longer looking at the news. Now, he also said, I'm connected enough. If anything important happens, I can't not know about it. People will tell me, so I don't need to worry about not being,
Right.
informed. And he's, staying up on personal development and business development. He's not got his head in a hole, but he's not going to USA Today or CNN. Now, I actually do, because I feel like if that's what's influencing a majority of America and the world, I want to see what they're responding to. So I'll give myself 30 seconds, 60 seconds, go look at it and see, is there anything dramatic that's going to be, hitting, or is it just the same negative crap? Yeah, it is. And then go somewhere else and look for some good news to counteract that. But again, we're coming back to input. What is that? You take a person, take any of us, one, but especially somebody who is suffering from some on the spectrum towards
Right.
depression, towards apathy, and what are they putting into their mind? And so often, as in all these things, we find people suffering and they don't have a lot of these ingredients. Again, always going to be an exception. We mentioned
Sure.
that before, that there could be somebody who's doing it all and still suffers. There can still be severe brokenness. I don't feel like that's the majority, which is why we're doing the show.
Right, and that's where I would conclude. All of us are out there. We could be a little bit more uplifted. And one of the things that I encourage people to consider is fasting. Take a period of time where it's fake and manufactured. There's nothing morally wrong with whatever your social media feed or news feed is, but just consider fasting from it. And when I had begun that process, it was Monday through Friday, I'm not looking. And then I dabble on the weekends and, internet surf or whatever, just out of curiosity, like you said, what's going on out there in that world. But I gave that up too. I would spend an hour there and feel down rather than up. And I could have spent that hour doing something else. So in our family, right, we're connected enough that when big things happen, we know, and we just don't feel the need to engage. And it's been so...
Well, I like your thing on fasting. It reminds me of another book we reference a lot, Shanti Feldhahn, her 30-day kindness challenge, where you take 30 days and she has you picking a person, somebody you have a problem with, like me. Man, I really struggle with Randy. And so for 30 days, she has a methodology where I have to say something positive and kind to you. I have to say something kind about you to somebody else. And I think the other part is I just can't say anything negative to you or about you, critical or whatever. And that's her 30-day thing and it's fasting from negativity in essence,
Right.
and feasting though on positivity on that side. So to take that, take your 30 days and replace it with, instead of whatever you do on the news and social media where you're exposed to the negativity, watch positivity.
And her point her conclusion was, it might not enhance the relationship at all, but
Thank you. Yeah.
You feel better.
Yes.
And that is clinically and demonstrably proven. Mm-hmm. And so when people out there say, well, that feels fake and I'm faking it or whatever. And I would say, well, in a sense, yes. And it's not that we want you to be fake and shallow and fake it till you make it kind of thing, but rather flip that word around and think of it as training. That if you wanted to go become a better golfer, we don't look at you and say, you stink so bad, you're fake golfing. That's not golf. You're faking it, man. Mm-hmm. And you could say that about anybody who isn't at the pinnacle of their sport. That's not the point. The point is to train kindness.
And again, the flip it does to your brain. For some reason, I remembered it was a plane flight last year or so, and I got on there, and lo and behold, I end up sitting right behind the lady with the kid who's just going nuts. And or maybe I was right in front, one or the other. Anyways, and the first thought, of course, you're prone to have is, why me?
Why me?
Why me?
Not fair.
Why this flight? Why me sitting here? Why? And then later on, I thought, because it was one of the worst I've experienced, and I thought, actually, maybe it's best, because if somebody else other than me wasn't here, they might just decapitate the lady and the kid. So maybe it's best that so it kind of gave me a,
thank you, God, for the opportunity of.
Yeah, and it sounds stupid, but
Yeah.
which makes me literally feel better, which changes the chemical direction of my attitude and whatnot. So now I had a purpose, which, can we go to the next one? That's
Yes.
it. All right, the next one is purpose, and I put that down. And right away, I want to caveat that by, when you're looking at somebody, I don't mean that they have this holy grail, supernatural, or like the movies we watch where they're going to save the world. Man, any purpose. You find somebody who has a drudgery purpose, but it's something to do. It's just something to do, and it's better than nothing. Not having a responsibility, not having a chore, a role, or whatever. leads
Or
to
having chores and roles that to the individual feel purposeless.
True. But it actually makes me think of the study that was done on how many of our CEOs and world leaders came from families where there was poverty or handicap. And when they extrapolate that, the hardship on them and the requirement and responsibility for them to do some things to help keep life afloat, it wasn't all about them.
Right.
It was purpose. Was it some grandiose, excitable thing? No.
No, it was to just get food on the table.
Yeah.
Or you just have to watch your little brother because I'm going to go over here.
Yeah.
The world is not about you. I know your friends want you to come and do this, and you can in an hour, but for this hour, you have to do this. The value of that, of expanding purpose,
Yeah.
recognition. It also makes me think of the experiment, and I'm sure you've run across this as well, where they paid people to dig a ditch and fill it up, right?
Pay people well, like
$100,000.
So here's your
8
job
hours a
over
day.
here,
Yeah.
doing your menial job for $15 an hour or whatever, and we'll double that. We'll give you 30. Come over here, dig a ditch, and fill it up. And people, the little
They would
study,
love to do this. Absolutely, I'll do that.
and they couldn't last.
They couldn't last. Making twice as much, working half the amount of time, and at the end of the day, when it's purposeless, even though the financial piece is there, the depression sets in, and it's not, and people know that innately somewhere in your heart, in your soul. And so now these days where we have so many jobs, families, school, and as both of us are so related into young people now in the millennial and Gen Z, where it culturally seems okay and appropriate for young men especially to find themselves not from 13 to 18 but from 15 to 30 and explore and experiment or whatever else, but there's a layer, a thread of purposelessness in there. And whereas I'm kind of a fan of not saying, hey, you're 18, you got to go to college, just get a degree. Like we grew up of the children of the Great Depression, grandparents and a lot of first-time college people and all of that. And for 30, 40 years, that was the way.
Education was the way out.
Education was the way out. And it's not necessarily. And so I do think we have to pivot a little bit, but we've pivoted from, a gap year to a gap decade.
Yeah, true.
That's a good thought. It's become a gap decade, which, okay, there's going to be, extremes of people who benefit from that. But I think most people are going to get stuck into this habit of purposelessness. They make it a habit, leaning on the government or parents or something to provide these basic needs, and then wonder because that's also what we see sometimes in the movies is we're going to get struck by lightning with the moonshot, right? Like I'm going to invent the internet and Google and in reality, that's not going to be the pathway for most people.
Well, and it's interesting that we gravitate. So when we have purposelessness, when we have apathy, we can't not have it. So we'll do it. We'll do it in a manufactured way, artificial way, and we'll watch it. So look, what do kids gravitate to? They want to see the next Avengers movie and grand purpose and people who are saving the world, or they want to do a video game where there's a win. They want to achieve.
Right. The level of purpose is within the game.
Yeah.
And it's an emblem and a badge and a level. What's the new type of shows like
reality TV.
Yeah. Reality. We're sitting on the couch watching other people's reality.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're doing it vicariously through other. So we become, instead of, this goes back to, was it Roosevelt? I can't remember the guy, the man in the arena.
That was the first Roosevelt.
Was it?
Teddy. Yeah.
And
the one who's fighting.
Kudos that go to the guy who goes, as opposed to, but that's more relevant, because I think we're becoming a culture who's more and more spectating than participating. And again, that purpose, and we all want to have a grandiose purpose. But again, if we're just looking at somebody struggling with despair and depression and apathy, just anything, it doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be super exciting, but just something where they feel a responsibility, they feel a need, a desire to help, whether it's fun and play and they're looking forward to a sport or something. My dad used to say back in his psychology days, one of the best things to do if you're struggling with depression is go find somebody to serve. There's somebody who's hurting worse than you. That's not to minimize your pain at all, but there's somebody out there who could use help. Go serve them. And it just gets us out of our own head, which is going to be controversial for some people to hear. They're not going to like hearing that. It's a possible ingredient.
It certainly seems like we could also argue that clinically, when you get into psychology is a soft science, to be sure, there's no hard lines. But when somebody is serving a purpose that's greater than themselves, that's outside of themselves, which most humans would land on, it's other humans, then that is healthy for one's mind, for one's body. And of course, when we're talking depression, anxiety, that is what we're talking about.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because the next one that I've got on here is, I actually titled it Inspiration. And my thought was, we talked about input, but and we've talked about being outside, is literally your environment, because we tend to, and again, I've got to give credit to my dad, because he dealt with this so much in his psychology training and whatnot, that when we feel a certain way, we tend to craft our environment around it, and even craft our posture and everything around it, and how that affects our attitude. You can't be, if you're depressed, if you talk about forcing it, get your shoulders back, get your head up, let the light in. I mean, there are literal things to do, and we tend to go the opposite way. When we feel bad, we want to draw the blinds, we want to cuddle up on the couch and whatnot. And I'm not saying to deny sitting in and feeling those feelings for a time, but at some point, if we want to counteract that, to open the blinds, to put on the music, to seek that inspiration, and even the posture of that, which again, I love exercise for that. It forces you to strengthen up, to pony up in that way. But what are the ways? And I feel like I grasp for that. Sometimes I wonder, Randy, if I'm always fighting depression, fearing it. And so I spend so much time crafting my environment to be inspirational. I mean, look at us. We've got an office with even cool wood furniture. Yeah. I always have music. We've got, pictures and books that are inspirational to us. We go sit out at lunch and look at Pikes Peak and take a deep breath and try to be present with that, have inspiring conversation. We don't sit there and gripe and what are the things that we can do and grasp onto, because they're vital.
They are. And again, clinically, there is no doubt that the entire environment has an impact, and most people are more in the vicious cycle, and the opposite of that is the virtuous circle. So here we are again, and if somebody's leaning on the depression side, the natural tendency is to want to curl up and
slump
escape
over
with
put on your big baggy clothes
and escape with a movie.
Yeah.
And a bowl of ice cream, and we've all been there. And there's a time and a place when that can be righteous and good and justified.
Yeah.
But if it's in response to depression or feeling down that pathway, then to the person who's not clinically suicidal or something like that, we're saying, hey, recognize that your environment is you are in an environment. It is subconsciously impacting you, and you have habitually created the environment that you're in. So on the extreme side with clutter, with hoarding, with those kinds of things, if people declutter, dehoard, de-whatever, does it, when you clean your room and you take that deep breath and you feel better about it, there's a few seconds of yes, you do, after the lawn is mowed or whatever those things are. And so what we're saying today is to be aware.
Yeah.
Be conscientiously leaning into that, especially like you said, if you know that if I let things get too cluttered, I know I'm going to get stuck and in this muddy, sticky, vicious cycle that pulls me down. Therefore, I need to set up a calendar, set up a habit, set up a whatever that once a week or once a month or whatever, I clean. I change my environment. I do go outside. That's where I think you've been doing a great job of, I am going to go on a walk, run, hike, bike, whatever at this o'clock. And I've done a bad job of that. Even if it's a 20-minute walk up the road, it changes the environment. There is a reset. On the clinical side, when you're doing the psychology research or the flow research, that reset, that change in environment is demonstrably beneficial to the brain.
Yeah. And I want to speak to those because there's going to be somebody listening who is in a hard circumstance where they're not self-employed like we are, and they can craft their environment where they want to. I mean, heck, I moved to this part of the country for more sunny days, and not everybody has that option. And it makes me, somebody's in a cubicle in a windowless place, and we're saying anything you can do. It reminds me of an old movie that's really interesting on this subject of depression overall, but even especially on this environment, but in the way that even if you watch the first 15 minutes, it's called Joe versus the Volcano. It's with Tom Hanks. Long time ago, somebody bought it and sent the movie to me because they heard me do a show. It said, "Oh man, you got to see this movie." And he works in this horrific factory. Everything's terrible. I mean, it starts off with this song that's just the most depressing song that goes along. And he walks into his windowless place, and it goes on. But then ultimately, when nobody's looking, he pulls out of his desk drawer this like Hawaiian hula lamp and sets it on his desk and turns it on because it's just like something. It's a little lifeline to something good. And then the boss comes along and tells him to put it away. And he's back in his gray, black, drab, dreary environment. But just that, it's so... It impacts us. And I think I want to just give gravity to it that we don't. I mean, look around right now, wherever you're at, if you're in a cubicle, if you're at your home, if you're wherever, and are there some things that inspire you, and to whatever length you need to go, buy a candle, get a different light bulb, turn the fluorescent lights off and do a lamp.
Yeah. Plants
yeah, sure.
Do a bonsai tree.
Yeah.
Companies, many forward-thinking companies, and again, demonstrably and by looking at data points, give people opportunity. Right, Google and Apple and the way they built their fancy new buildings, bring in the light, bring in the plants. They make people meet. Like, was it Google? I think that if you go to the bathroom, it's all the way down the hall, and you have to walk all the way down there, and you're gonna see somebody because there's only one place to go, and they did that on purpose. Patagonia does that. But of course, here we are 40, 50 years into corporate America and the habits that have been set. So those are the few and far between companies. Most of us are stuck in a rut.
Yeah.
And like you say, recognize it, be aware, and do something to change your environment.
Friends, thank you for joining us on this journey. I know this topic is a sensitive one in our culture right now. I hope we did it justice. Don't want to minimize it at all. We want to give more options than just therapy and meds. And we'll continue in an episode about a week from now, probably on another Friday, and give the rest of the options as well. You can find Dr. Randy James at truelifemedicine.com. We have more and more people all the time flying in from around the country to see him and do a lot of their care via telemedicine as well. And if you do connect with him, let me know. I'd love to connect with you. Let me know at kmiller@kevinmiller.co. That's my email address. And that's also where I'd ask you as you listen to this episode and have questions or ideas or concerns, tell me about it. I'd love to engage with you. Until next time, I hope this episode helps you drive further and enjoy the ride. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey. I look forward to meeting you in the Drive Tribe community for ongoing discussions about each episode. You can subscribe to the Drive Drop newsletter for weekly updates. Find it all at kevinmiller.co, along with all our social media and video clips. Until next time, I hope this episode helps you drive further and enjoy the ride.